I'd like to call the Selectmen's meeting to order for October 2nd. Any reason for non-public?
We do under New Hampshire RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2, lowercase e, 2 legal issues.
Okay, we have a pretty lengthy agenda tonight, so keep it moving as best we can. Consideration of minutes of September 18th.
Mr. Chairman, I have two changes. The first one is on page 2 under the V&A, hospice. The 1, 2, 3, fourth line down, they have purchased the new location. They're not renting it, so rent needs to be changed to purchase. And on page 9, the third paragraph down, the 6th line down, I'd like is being made just removed, and then the sentence will make sense.
Okay, any other changes?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. Page 2. Under the VNA hospice, where it's attributed to me, the second line, it says "we forget." It should be "we forgot." Okay, it's just a tense issue. And then on page 9, last sentence, again, attribution to me. Mr. O'Brien stated if he looks over the utilization time, not her utilization time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple also. Page 11. Right in the middle paragraph that starts out, Mr. Harriman agreed with Ms. Murray. On the last line there, it says the Mike decision to go somewhere else should be decide. And then on page 13, right in the middle of that page, in the middle of that paragraph that starts with Brad Harriman, October 22nd, have our adoption of the master plan. You cross out public meeting and put master plan. That's it. Me.
Okay, any other corrections? Have a motion to approve as amended?
Second.
Hey, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearings, we have 2. One is a temporary event permit, the Hospital and Community Aid Association, Inc., to hold all fundraisers on October 4th and 5th, October 11th and 12th, October 18th, 19th, October 25th, 26th, November 1st and 2nd, November 8th, 9th, November 15th, 16th, November 22, 23, December 6th and 7th, December 13th and 14th, 2019. Somebody here to speak to that? Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Yes. I'm Jane Wass of the Hospital and Community Aid Association, and we're here for our annual fall fundraiser to raise money for equipment for patient care for Huggins Hospital, Back Bay Rehab, and also the community. And this is all from donated items. We never know that we've even had a fair. One thing I'd like to note is that in the last 20 years that my husband and I have co-chaired this, and with all the volunteers, Back Bay Rehab has been special in our hearts. Not only is it great for rehab, but the community and surrounding communities can join for their own physical fitness, and 90% of the equipment at Back Bay Rehab has been donated by the street fair.
That's pretty cool.
Also, to all medical equipment is always free to anyone, anywhere.
Yeah, I think something that was left out is that this will all take place up on Pine Hill Road
Yes,
at the 2 buildings that are there?
just the one.
Just one of the buildings?
Yeah, the first barn is under code, and then we have a handicap porta potty as well.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve a temporary event permit, the Hospital and Community Aid Association Incorporated, to hold fundraisers on October 4-5, October 11-12, October 18-19, October 25-26, November 1-2, November 8-9, November 15-16, November 22nd and 23rd, December 6th and 7th, December 13th and 14th, all in the year 2019 at the Pine Hill Road facility.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is a public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. The Great Hall, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, for the acceptance of an unanticipated funds for an amount awarded that is less than $10,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-B 3A relative to a donation for one additional walk-in gate at pickleball court and one additional 4x4 gate to exterior fence for a total cost of $2,170 from the New Hampshire Lakes Region Pickleball Club. Somebody here for that?
Good evening, my name is Joe Santoro. I'm on the board of directors of the New Hampshire Lakes Region Pickleball Club. And for years, we've been trying to get those two gates installed to make access to the courts easier and safer for our players. And I believe a few months ago, you as a board agreed to let those gates be installed, and we offered to pay for the cost. Those two gates are now in place, and we'd like to know to whom we make out the check.
What?
Is it to David? Is it to Paul? Is it to Brad?
I would assume it would be the town of Wolfeboro.
That's correct, Town of Wolfeboro.
And we can give it to you tonight.
That would be fine.
Okay. Town of Wolfeboro for 2170.
That's what I have here.
Any other questions?
No, this is a public hearing. Anybody wish to speak in favor of this or opposed? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Board, would you like to make a motion? Somebody?
I'll make a motion that we accept $2,170 from the pickleball club for the gates to the pickleball courts. I guess it's New Hampshire Lake Region Pickleball Club.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you.
Joe.
Okay, next on our agenda is the weekly bulk vote. This includes the manifest, raffle permit. I think that's all this week.
Late one. I'll make a motion to approve the bulk vote.
Second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is new business. Discussion of August expenditure revenue report, Finance Director. Troy?
There we go. I'm going to go a little way up there. All right. So I'm going to be referencing from the memo that was dated September 13th, dealing with the August financials, as well as giving an update on some preliminary research based on questions from the Board of Selectmen concerning fuel costs. So I'll update where we are on that process. Overall, for as of August 31st, given our 12-month expended run rate, we should have been at 66.667% for each fund. The general fund was at 72.994% expended. Water fund 75.487 expended. Electric fund 40.476% expended. Sewer fund 70.787% expended. and Pop Whalen at 55.353% expended, for an overall expended rate of 60.257. There's a unique piece, though, in that impacted the August financials, is that the September school care bill, so the health insurance, health and dental, posted in August as opposed to September, just based upon when it's due. So that check was cut, and that was for a total of $182,077.50. So my commentary that was provided in a memo from then on for various departments, I minus out that impact, but I wanted to get that out there because your overall cover page expend rates, has that expenditure for September. So when you get your September report, when I'll be presenting that to you on the 16th, then you'll notice that $182,077.50 will not be there. I do want to just speak to the adjustments that were made in the month of August, as referenced in the July financial report that I presented. I mentioned that there was a $68,441.50 principal payment for a bond that was misposted, that was located in the general fund, and it belonged in the water fund. That adjustment has been made, as well as per the request of the police department. When we looked at it, we had one employee that was being in the payroll system that was being tagged to the summer salaries line when they should have been assigned to the part-time wage line. So that adjustment has been made, and we corrected the GL assignment in the payroll system. As well as we had 5 hours worth of time that was adjusted out of the fire budget and placed in the emergency management budget, along with the corresponding FICA and Medicare taxes. So those were the major adjustments that had occurred. With that, I don't know if there's any other commentary that would like to be provided. Currently, where we are for September, we completed actually an adjustment today to rectify the misposting for the transfer from the general fund to the money market account that I detailed on in this memo for August. So that is rectified. It is great to actually be fully staffed in the department. Feel happy that we achieved that 90-day goal. However, this is for circumstances beyond my control. I'm only enjoying week number 2 of actually having everybody all together, as I've been the one that's been out. So at the request of discussion of fuel, if you don't mind, to transition to that, trying to analyze a little bit the 2018, 2019 cost runs, why budgets are on that particular line item are being expended a little too quickly, particularly now as we're getting ready to enter into heating season again. The bid price that we had in 2018 from January to June was $1.96 a gallon, and then in 2018 that changed to $2.52 a gallon from July to December for 2018's count. And then here in 2019 we have from January to June that $2.52 rate, and then the bid came back at $2.14 from July on. So our cost per unit for the second half of the year will be down. However, also looking at saying, well, that doesn't explain the whole picture. We also have a usage. So for instance, in January, this building used about 300 more gallons of number 2 heating oil as opposed to the prior year. Another factor that's buried into this GL and not hadn't been, we only were originally looking at oil, and now I have to go back and compare, is the wood pellet pricing actually gets posted to this line. The other secondary piece that needs to be looked at is the propane, just to make sure that things are posted. I did find 2 entries on 2018 where a pre-purchase of propane was actually posted to the 411 account as opposed to the 638 account. So that's the status of the audit. I know that was another question. I've contacted the auditors, and I'm expecting the draft audit minus the secondary piece of the other post-employment benefits audit, but to actually get the draft of the main financials and the status of internal controls. The due date deliverable is for tomorrow, as the auditor was putting the final touches on that. So this week I should have a draft that I can email out to the board. So my apologies for not being able to attend the last meeting, and would like to have all that buttoned up for you ahead of time.
Do you have any questions, Linda?
Yeah, I have a couple. I had sent 6 questions to you. The issue I had, and it's probably this Brewster building more than anything else, that's significantly overspent, and I was just wondering whether we could have some kind of an idea how we're going to make up that difference in that budget for this year. I also had a question about the Libby Museum capital outlay for the shoreline repair and whether that's happening or not.
That item I still have to get back to you on.
I believe that did go out for bid process this past week.
Okay, so it did go out to bid. Okay. The other thing is that with your reports, it doesn't seem to have the full amount, and I'll do the library. The library was a $5 million. There was $4 million something in here. So the report shows that the library has overspent $34,794.93. I don't think they're over in the whole project. And so my question then was, when are we going to get the next capital projects report? Because that's really where it gave us that comparison with what was appropriated and what was spent to date when projects go over 2 years. And I think that's what's going on in here.
Yeah, you're correct as far as the 2-year time frame with that particular project, and we'll shoot real hard to give you that report for the October 16th meeting.
And my one other one it was in the water treatment plant, line 392 is overspent by $15,000. And that, to me, is a contracted number, and I'm wondering whether we've got a posting error there.
I will take a look at that and get back to you.
Okay.
Yep.
And those are my questions.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
Okay, I just had one, Troy, on the revenue report.
Yep.
On page 2 there, about 2/3 of the way down, for sale of aluminum cans. We're anticipating $24,000 for the year. We haven't received anything yet on that. Even though the load or two probably should have gone out by now, I would almost think, but unless we're holding on to them for, the pricing and stuff like that. But,
I'm sorry, Brad, I did not hear that whole question.
I'm sorry. On about the sale of aluminum cans, the
Yep.
transfer station, about 2/3 of the way down on page 2 there. There's a $24,000 estimated revenue, which nothing has come in on yet.
So what's in here, just let me make sure, my page 2, the aluminum cans. So as of, in fact, we were just talking with Dave from the board at the budget meeting earlier today, of working on what the posting actually is for receiving the revenue from the solid waste center. We're working that out to get that posted, because I don't see where that actually comes through to the system anyway. So.
Thank you. Welcome back, Troy. Glad you're feeling better. A tactical one, there was an issue with the police department about writing a check for retirement contribution for one of the officers. The check came back and then it had to get resubmitted. Is that all done now, do you know?
You're talking about the ICMA?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, ICMA is all
Okay,
up to date and posting and.
And that wasn't a put you on the spot question.
No,
I just
that's
wanted to
fine.
make sure I could
It's-
check that off
Nope.
my list. Outstanding things that I think are now going to start coming forward is and I think we had asked, and I know you're probably working on getting it done, we need to get a look at what the rationale is that drives the overhead allocations. We got to have that at this table, because that's going to prospectively gyrate a budget or two around, unless so we really need to understand why the change, and I think that should happen sooner rather than later. The debt capacity conversation, in your absence, Matt did a pretty good job trying to figure out what it is. Yeah. But I think we need to button that one up too, because budget season's upon us, and we need to figure out what the waterfall of this stuff looks like and how much we can carry. So that's just kind of a reminder on that one. Thank you, Linda, and you, Troy, as well, for the audit, because I had the same question as to when are we going to see the bloody thing. And maybe a longer term one, just to park in the back of your head. Are you seeing any lapsing of appropriations? In other words, we see some things going on, or seeing some emails and memos about projects, contractors, contracts, can't get people to do we have an idea, or will we have an idea at some point as to which ones are going to lapse? Just park that one.
Yeah, we'll park it.
You can get back.
And also, as we get closer to the end of the year, then the memo will be going out of, listen, department heads, you need to be looking ahead, and we have to make sure that we go through the encumbrance process to make sure that we have signed contracts.
So, yeah, for two reasons. One is it could be encumbersome, or second is it just flat out not going to get done, and we have to go. We have to go tell people it just ain't going to get done. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, just an update, for the debt schedule. We went back to the 2018 town report and been working on actually reconciling that. We seem to have a little trouble getting back to those numbers. So, as well as we're laying in the proposed total for what with the library and the electric fund. So, proposed bonding coming up. So that's the sort of the delay on the debt schedule, just making sure we're comfortable that we have the right base that we're working with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next on the agenda is Emergency Operations Plan.
Yeah, in front of you, you should have a memo that's addressed to me from Kathy LaPierre, the administrative executive assistant to the fire department. This is an annual process that we have to confer the emergency operations plan. We've been through the plan. Kathy's worked through that. And we highlighted some accomplishments which has happened since the 2018 adoption. We recouped $24,345 in public assistance grants as a result of a winter storm. We've held seminars on shelter trainings. Those were actually very well attended. We also held a classroom and practical session on shelter training. These are items that will be continuing as we begin to develop a better plan for sheltering needs. We also had discussions with the school district regarding pet sheltering, because it was recognized if we don't offer a way for people to shelter their pets, they're probably not going to go to the shelter themselves. Conducted a walkthrough of different locations which could be used as potential shelters. As you are well aware as well, we just completed the hazard mitigation plan update, and you guys recently adopted. And we met with numerous facilities in coordination of their individual emergency operations plans and how that affects the towns. Moving forward over the next year, goals that we're looking to work on that are actively taking place: appoint a new emergency management director, research additional grant funding for disaster recovery as events occur, training for not only responders but for citizenry, and look at the additional resources that we have within our community. Continued coordination is happening with local and state stakeholders regarding emergency operations plans, continue sheltering. One of the goals that we'd like to accomplish this year with one of the facilities in town is to conduct a tabletop exercise to see what works, what doesn't work, what some of our shortcomings may be. And I know the police department is already working on this, the implementation of the Code Red system. So that's kind of a quick summary of what's happened over the past year in emergency management since the adoption of this plan. And if you have any questions, we may be able to answer them for you.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll make a motion to authorize the chairman of the board to sign the annual concurrence of the 2018 Emergency Operations Plan.
Second.
Second?
Yep.
All the, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is discussion of the 2020-2029 capital improvement plan.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Barnard. I'm the chairman of the planning board. I'm here with Matt Sullivan tonight on behalf of the planning board to present the 2020 to 2029 capital improvement program. Planning board reviewed this plan last night at their meeting. This is an advisory plan. It's prepared yearly to serve as a guide for you folks in the budget committee during your budget discussions. It's a 10-year plan for our municipal capital projects, and all of these have been recommended by the town manager. The plan spreads out the projects in order to lessen the burden on the taxpayers while taking into account the departmental needs. Plan is developed by a CIP committee, which is appointed by the planning board. The members of that are Paul O'Brien from the Board of Selectmen. Linda Murray was the alternate when Paul was unable to attend. Bob Lohman from the Budget Committee. There are 4 citizen members, Paul Whalen, Suzanne Ryan, Chuck Sumner, Tim Cronin, and also 2 planning board members, Mike Hodder and myself. We met with the department heads. We review all of their projects, and those projects have all taken into account the guidelines that you folks adopted in June of this year. We discussed the details, the cost, and the timing. The CIP plan, which Matt is going to go over with you in just a moment, includes a brief project description of all the 2020 proposed projects and the capital reserve accounts, the contributions proposed for this year. New this year is the inclusion of the Governor Wentworth Regional School District annual capital maintenance proposal. Also in the plan is the 2021 proposed projects and a list of all of the proposed projects in the years of 2022 to 2028. I want to thank the committee members, the department heads, town manager, Matt Sullivan, for all of their work developing this CIP. Many hours goes into this project, and I think that it's a very worthwhile document. And I hope that this will be a helpful guide for you folks and a useful planning tool for you and the Budget Committee. Now I'll turn this over to Matt. Thank you.
Evening, members of the board. Matt Sullivan, the planning director for the town of Wolfeboro. I think I remember being here last year in October of November and remembering that Kathy had stolen my thunder quite well for the introduction to the plan, but I quickly want to cover a few items before I get into sort of the meat and potatoes of the document that's before you this evening. The CIP process was first authorized by the voters back in 1987, so this is a capital improvements program that has been in place for nearly 40 years now, so it's something that the town has been working hard at for a long, long time. As Kathy mentioned, the primary goal here is to prioritize large capital projects moving forward. I'll get into a few nuances of our capital process that go beyond large capital projects, including our capital reserve funds, but really that's the main intent of this process. Our plan is focused on a 10-year program. Other municipalities around the state go anywhere from 5 to 7 to 10 to 12 years. This community has typically gone with that 10-year schedule, and that's how this plan is structured, really looking at the capital projects over that period of time. The process is quite simple. Department heads bring their projects to the CIP committee. The CIP committee reviews those projects and actually places them in a year within the CIP plan. There are a couple objectives, but the primary one is to limit the impact of capital projects and balance them over the 10-year schedule so that the tax rate is not overly impacted and we don't have large spikes and valleys. And you'll see a bit of what I'm talking about in just a few minutes when we get into the document itself. We obviously then draft the CIP document itself. The CIP spreadsheets are developed to actually show the schedule, and subsequently the plan is adopted and brought to you folks after the planning board reviews it. I do want to mention that this year was an interesting year. We have been aiming to have a follow-up meeting of the CIP every January or February. We set some really, I think, ambitious goals for the process this year, including an enhanced review by the town manager and a more intense, from a period of meetings perspective, process. And I think we accomplished all those goals, and I think department heads really helped us achieve some great things with this process. As Kathy mentioned, per statute, Governor Wentworth Regional School District did participate in the CIP this year, which was fantastic. We had Kathy Oblanis, the business administrator, attend with us, and she presented the $150,000 annual recurring capital maintenance fund that goes with the school district, primarily focused on roof maintenance, which I'll get into in just a second. One note I did want to make is that the CIP was planned to be adopted last night by the planning board. The reason it was not ultimately adopted is because the public hearing was not technically noticed with due notice based on the accelerated schedule at the end. With that said, there were limited comments in the document and there were actually no text amendments at all, so the document you see in front of you is the final document as it stands moving forward. Before I get into the details of the projects, and really I'll focus this evening on the 2020 projects, it's typically how I've presented the document because those are the ones you'll see in the warrant article development process in the coming months. I'd like to start with some context for the CIP, and I always sort of start with this chart because I think it tells a very interesting story. What this looks at is the historical requested via the CIP number and the approved via the voters number out back to 2006 going up to 2017. And what I think the story this tells is that when the CIP process, when we're looking at it back in 06, 07, 08, there was a real misalignment between what department heads and other town bodies were asking for and what the needs and means of the voters were at that time. As you move out to 2017, what I think you see there is that A, the process has become better aligned with what the voters' capacity is to support these projects, and I think it also reinforces the fact that our department heads and the Board of Selectmen and other bodies do a great job of presenting these projects to the public and have an excellent justification for the capital items that go ultimately onto the warrant. So I think that coming together of our requests and our approvals really is meaningful as we look forward for the CIP. Diving into this year's CIP specifically, looking at the 2020 through 2029 period of time, I'm going to talk about two different numbers, and it's important to keep these in mind as we look through the CIP document. Project expenditures and actual tax impact. And I'll differentiate those two as best as I can as we go along, but this is basically the amount of money that is scheduled within the CIP to be spent as part of the projects that have been submitted. One example of how this doesn't necessarily amount to tax rate impact is if we look at that $7 million that's in there for 2020 this year, only about $3 million or $2.7 million is actually coming out of tax rate impact based on that number. The remaining funds are either coming out of the electrical fund, they're coming out of the water fund, or they're coming out of some sort of capital reserve account that exists right now. So not all of the projects that you see in the CIP will hit the tax rate dollar for dollar, and I think that's important to keep in mind looking at these numbers. One thing that's very noticeable here, many of you have heard about this project, it is out in 2022. We do have the public safety building, which is currently projected for a cost of $11.5 million. We recognize that some work needs to be done to refine that number and lower the cost, but we've shown that number because it's the most accurate number that we have to date, and that's the one we've reflected within the CIP. One of the reasons that you see this downward trend as we look into out years is that simply the projects are not as numerous and the estimates become more volatile. So there really isn't the same level of accuracy and precision as we move into those out years for that to be a reliable number, and therefore you really see a decrease in capital expenditure. I expect that as we get into those out years of the CIP moving forward, those numbers will rise, but hopefully to a sustainable level for the voters within the town so that we can support these projects. Now as we turn to tax impact, slightly different number. This is how the tax impact actually hits the voter. I mentioned just a few minutes ago that this number is a bit smaller. The reason we're up at 4.9 here is because of the Libby Museum project, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. I expect that number may be a bit lower as we actually go to the warrant season. But as you look across this 10-year period of time, this is the projected tax impact of the capital projects within the plan, which I'll review tonight. We also, as I mentioned before, go beyond just our $100,000 or more capital expenditures in the CIP. We've actually used the CIP process and the CIP committee to take a look at our capital reserve funds that we use quite well in the community as proactive funding mechanisms to ensure that those capital reserve accounts are actually going to be adequately funded as we move forward. What we do to do that is each department head presents a funding schedule for how the capital reserve account should be funded by the voter. And we also take in a capital spending plan, meaning that we need to know for that 10-year period what are each of the capital reserve accounts actually going to be spending. And a good example of this, and I just showed 3 here for your reference, is as we look at the fire department apparatus line here. That's that pink color. You can see that as we move into 2020, 2021, there's an increased balance within the capital reserve account. That's because there's an annual contribution happening by the voters. But out in 2022, there's actually a purchase being made out of that capital reserve account. So we have a reflected deficiency here that will need to be made up by a trade-in or some other mechanism through the voter. As we then look out to 2023 and 2024, 2023 is another scheduled appropriation to that account, but out in 2024, there's yet another anticipated expenditure there that could potentially drive this into a negative place. The long-term goal here, though, is to project these capital reserves so that we can maintain a healthy balance. It's also a signal to department heads that they need to make up some funding with their project or potentially reduce the scope of their request moving forward as well. But let's jump into 2020 projects. I'm going to focus on these this evening and touch lightly on our 2021 through 2029 projects. But in 2020, starting with the electric department, there are a few projects I would keep in mind. There are 3 specifically. First is the purchase of an ME2 bucket truck. This is the replacement of one of the bucket trucks that you see driving around town, making emergency repairs and restoration calls during the winter or in other seasons. The existing truck that's being replaced is an 11-year-old truck. And hopefully that will it will reach end of its useful life during 2020, at which point we'll purchase another truck. This is one project I do want to note that there's no impact to the tax rate because this is paid out of the electric enterprise fund. That enterprise fund is a result of the rate payments made by the users within the network. So your current rate already reflects this purchase that will be made in 2020, and therefore there's no tax rate impact. The next 2 projects are Phase 5 voltage conversion projects, are subsequent requests to the 2019 appropriation that the voters voted on. This is the next phase of this project, of the large-scale conversion of the town. There are 2 projects here, the conversion of substation number 4 and the Forest Road conversion. Those are estimated at $1.13 million and $1.126 million, respectively. Again, no tax rate impact here, as these are already prescribed within the electric fund balance and already within the rate study that's been done by the electric department. This is a 4-year phase project, so as we look forward to 2021, you will actually see another project coming before as part of this process. But again, that project will be funded out of the electrical enterprise fund, so there will be no tax rate impact. And moving forward into the Public Works Department, this is where we really have our meat of the process. There are quite a few Public Works projects that I'm going to jump quickly through right now. This first one is an interesting one. It's an example of where the expected tax rate impact is much lower than the actual scheduled expenditure of the account. This is our Public Works Vehicle Capital Reserve account. The scheduled purchases out of this account are $307,000, but again, a portion of that will be expended from existing monies that the voters have already put into the account. But there will be a $175,000 annual contribution sought as part of the 2020 warrant article process to go into the CIP, or to go into this capital reserve to ensure that these purchases can be made. The 3 pieces of equipment being purchased, HD2, a full-size dump truck, HD10, a 1.5-ton truck, and also one of our sidewalk plows, HD14. Those 3 purchases are scheduled to be made out of this capital reserve account during the 2020 year based on end of useful life scheduling. Annual road rebuild, upgrade, and maintenance, a very popular warrant article from year to year. I know it's a competitive process for everyone's road to get onto this program. This year, there are 5 projects in summary being proposed. The first is the rebuild of Allen Road. The second is the overlay of North Wolfeboro Road. The third is an overlay of Pine Street and a small section of Laner Street. The fourth is the reconstruction of Bryant Road. And I just want to point out that this project, because of its scope, is scheduled to be bid out and undertaken by private contractors as not to take away from the regular operations and maintenance that the Public Works Department is doing. And project number 5 is actually the engineering and permitting for Stoneham Road. That's a more complex project based on its scope, and we'll be taking on phase 1, if you will, of that program in 2020 with an expected construction year of 2021. The total request this year is scheduled to be at $900,000, and this is probably a good time for me to mention the fact that CIP is obviously the first step in the warrant article creation process. Some of these numbers may be adjusted as they go through the budget review process. Your review process, obviously, is of the warrant articles. So some of these numbers and even the scopes of the projects may change as more accurate estimates do come in before you for your review. These are though the August-September estimates based on the presentations of the department heads, intended to provide a general perspective on how the capital projects will hit the voter. Next project is a recreational dock repair focused on docks A through D. If you're standing here and looking out in the docks, this is from the left-hand side, the 4 docks towards the middle of the docks down there. These are our recreational docks, or half of our recreational docks. This is part of a 3-phase project to make improvements to the town docks based on the 2017 Time Bond Asset Management Plan that was done. It came out of the dock committee's work. This first phase in 2020 is really focused on, again, upgrades to those docks A through D. Replacing the decking, the pilings, the piling caps, the stringers, and the fender piles. There are a couple ways we're going to fund this project. It's proposed to be about $400,000 in total cost. 1, we have an existing capital reserve account that has about $100,000 in it. 2, we are going to be requesting $170,000 from the voters in cash to match this, or to contribute to this project. And 3, we are currently applying for a boating infrastructure grant, or BIG grant, as I've identified it there, for $130,000 that would also contribute match funding to the project for a total project cost of $400,000. But again, just focusing on those 4 docks. In 2021, we have 2 components of the project proposed that will seek additional grant funding. The first is the potential dock expansion, which I know will be under further discussion by the Board of Selectmen. We again think that we may have the opportunity to secure boating infrastructure grant funding, and actually a different level of funding for that project. Additionally, we'll be making the remaining repairs to docks E through G, which are the remaining finger docks as you go to the right-hand side down there. In 2022, the third proposed phase of the project, we'd be making seawall repairs along the Smith River to the cribbing and the existing substructure there. And I would also note that if you have any technical questions about any of these projects, Mr. Ford is sitting right there, and I think would be happy to answer any of those. This is a general 3-phase project for the docks, with this 2020 project being really the focus on the recreational docks A through D. Dockside parking lot is a project that has been obviously discussed as part of public meetings in the past. We're sort of looking at the dockside area comprehensively, and as a result, we decided to push that project to the end of the phasing project down there, if you will, really in the interest of making sure that we don't compromise a project upgrade by bringing in heavy equipment as we work on other sections of the dockside area down there. As this project is proposed, the construction is actually for 2023 here. We do have an existing capital reserve account that we're proposing to fund into the future. The specific proposal here is to put $50,000 into that account both in 2020 and 2021, with a $75,000 contribution both in 2022 and 2023. Ultimately, what we're hoping for is a more sort of inclusive design down there in the sense that we'd like to integrate some stormwater management down there, have some BMPs built in, add some green space, while still doing our best to minimize the reduction of parking in the area as well. I think it's critical to sort of have that balance between our proposed design solution, and I think that's really the goal of the Public Works Department, certainly the Planning Department, and I hope of the Board of Selectmen as well, to have a balance of green space and also parking down in that area. Cary Beach parking lot and beach stormwater improvements. Voters may remember that there was an appropriation this year to do design and engineering on this project. That design work is, I'd say, at about 65 or 70% completion right now. We do have a preliminary design that we're very happy with. I think that we'll be going some future adjustment. That design was presented to the CIP committee, and the project cost as it's proposed is $450,000. It does include, obviously, some significant stormwater upgrades there, including the installation of a storage area under our new proposed parking lot, also some infiltration trenches, and additionally some under drains that will ultimately filter stormwater and get it out to the wetland area adjacent to Cary Beach. This was really based on, obviously, the cyanobacteria concerns that were expressed certainly in the past, and I think that will continue into the future. This is recognized as a critical hotspot area, and we feel that this stormwater upgrade at Cary Beach will hopefully lend itself to decreased sediment and nutrients within the water. I also do want to point out that the design that has been done not only deals with stormwater, it also offers some amenities, and I hesitate to call them that because they really are things that I think are critical to a successful beach, and certainly to the type of beach that Wolfeboro would like to have. One includes an ADA access mat, also outdoor showers, some paved pathways for access, a kayak launching area, and locations for portable toilets. Well, I would say those are amenities. All of those sort of formalize access and use in a way that results in less erosion and sedimentation compromise. So hopefully that will actually decrease the actual stormwater impact to that area as well. Building Maintenance Capital Reserve. I mentioned this project at the CIP presentation at the Planning Board last night. I want to be frank about where we're coming from with this proposal. We are proposing $50,000 be contributed to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund in 2020. We had made a commitment to the Board of Selectmen that we would be making significant progress on asset management plans in the 2019 year. We recognize that we have failed on that commitment and that significant progress needs to be made. That said, we also recognize that the need for building maintenance will not go away. The idea of deferring this contribution to a later year does not in any way assist with the critical upgrades that will need to be made to our facilities moving forward. We recognize that a substantial investment needs to be made both in time and in money by the town in doing asset management planning on our various buildings in the town, but the idea of, again, deferring this funding is not something that the CIP committee recommended ultimately as part of the capital program. Moving to the water and sewer departments, there are some unique funding scenarios here that I'll touch on. Obviously, when it comes to our water department projects here, this is something that will be funded out of the water fund. This is the water department backhoe that has ended its useful life when it comes to intense workload. We will be proposing to transition this backhoe, the existing water department backhoe, to the solid waste department for some more light duty. But the proposal is to purchase a new piece of equipment to replace the existing John Deere for $120,000 in 2020. The wastewater treatment plant, moving to the sewer side of things, we do propose another capital reserve account contribution in 2020. It will follow the same model of $125,000 that's been prescribed for several years now based on the asset management plan that Dave Ford and his team had done. There will be a new plan developed with a new funding level out past 2022 with a new list of projects to be undertaken, so there will be a comprehensive update at that time. But in 2020, the project is really focused on comprehensive upgrades to the existing electrical system within the facility. There is an expectation, or at least the belief, that that will reduce energy consumption by approximately 5%. So there is a net gain to the community despite this needed investment into the facility going forward. One note I will make that was brought up at the CIP committee is that there were questions about whether or not a new wastewater treatment plant was needed at some point in the future and whether or not we should be saving money to do that. I think the sewer department and Dave Ford have been able to identify a long-term funding strategy and upgrade strategy that keeps the existing plant operational for a long period of time. I certainly don't think that Dave is planning at this time for a comprehensive or a new construction of a new plant. It's believed that the existing funding and upgrade strategy will cover that and that we'll be able to maintain the existing plant moving forward. Moving to emergency management and the fire and police department specifically, the fire department is proposing to increase its annual contribution to its vehicle capital reserve account. The existing contribution is $186,000, and in 2020 they are proposing to increase it to $196,000, a $10,000 increase. This is based on an annual escalation of about 3 to 5% on the purchase prices for apparatus. But there is a trade-off that is happening here, and that is based on a strategic plan that the fire department has put together. In 2022, Engine 3 will be traded in as a package to replace the existing Ladder 1. Engine 3 will not be replaced. The fleet will be downsized by one vehicle, at least into the foreseeable future. And in 2024, there will be an accelerated purchase of engine number 4 up from 2029 all the way up to 2024. So that piece will be purchased in that year. And we saw that earlier as we were going through that capital reserve bar chart as well. The police department is planning for a new dispatch console out in 2022, sort of lining up well with the public safety building project. They've been contributing to a capital reserve for just 1 year now, $102,000 annually. The expected purchase price for this piece of equipment based on escalation is expected to be between $350,000 and about $420,000. Therefore, a continued contribution of $102,000 is proposed to the capital reserve, so that in year 2022, a balance of approximately $408,000 is available for that purchase. The police department is very cognizant, I think I can speak for them here, of the fact that depending on the result of the public safety building project, there may be a need to install this console at a different facility or in even the existing facility. They're very well aware of that, and they'll be, I think, dynamically adjusting to any factors associated with that public safety building upgrade project. Moving directly into that, the public safety building, we are currently moving forward on a site selection feasibility study. We have signed a contract with LaValle Brensinger and proceeding with test fitting based on 6 potential sites, and also with very variable siting of the different departments, both with a independent fire, independent police, and combined public safety building. This is really a response to, I think, what we would call the sticker shock of the $11.8 million number that was presented last year as part of the CIP process and by LaValle Brensinger to the Board of Selectmen. We recognize that that number needs to be analyzed to ensure that it's accurate and to ensure that cost reductions cannot be found within the project. One of the ways that we plan to do that is to identify whether there might be actual siting options that we can explore moving forward. Obviously, though, that project is scheduled, or maybe not obviously, but so you know, that project is scheduled to be wrapped up before, hopefully, the end of 2019. We do expect, though, that once the Board of Selectmen are aware of what the site selection options are, they will set a course for how the project shall proceed based on those 6 options. When we decide to do that, it's our hope that we'll have architecture and engineering monies available during the 2020 year so that we can, again, further refine that cost estimate, develop an actual design concept and a site plan for this facility or these facilities, so that we can bring something more concrete to the stakeholders by the end of 2020 for the CIP process and certainly for the Board of Selectmen's consideration moving forward. So that's $150,000 being proposed to the existing capital reserve account associated with the public safety building. Parks and Recreation Department does have one proposed project in 2020. It's an upgrade to the existing lighting along the Bridge Falls path stretching from Center Street back to the railroad station. If you do have a chance to walk down there and check out not only the lights but also the electrical conduit connections on the bases of those lights, you'll see that there is some need for repair. The result has been at times that there's issues with safety and security as the lights go in and out, and we've made some temporary repairs, at least in 2019. Christine has initiated that with the Parks and Recreation Department. However, the long-term viability of the lights, it simply is not very promising. Therefore, what's been proposed is a lighting project ranging between $50,000 and $150,000 based on the sort of aesthetic of the project. But the Capital Reserve Committee, the CIP Committee actually recommended a $50,000 recurring Capital Reserve contribution in 2020, 2021, and 2022. The idea there being that if a purchase is necessary in the immediate future, there will be funds available to make that purchase if it's an urgent need at that time. However, if the project can be deferred out to 2022, the Parks and Recreation Department would have an opportunity to present a more aesthetically pleasing project to the voters, certainly to the Board of Selectmen, to allow for expenditure that would really form a nice gateway entrance to the downtown area, because we recognize that the Bridge Falls path is being used frequently for folks to access our community. Getting to the last 3 projects in the CIP for 2020, this is a bit of an odd project. Again, this will be on the school warrant. This is the Governor Wentworth Regional School District. You may have heard me mention before, this is typically a $150,000 annual contribution for the maintenance of buildings within the district. It really focuses on roof maintenance, and this year they've actually gotten authorization to increase that $150,000 number up to $200,000 based on some imminent needs that they have. Therefore, you'll see a $200,000 number on the warrant when you go to vote next year. I would just note that, again, it's not really reflected within the CIP documents when it comes to tax rate impact, but it is something that the voters should be aware of, and certainly something that we'll be including in the CIP process moving forward. The library solar project is a project that was actually brought to light about a year and a half ago when the library project was being approved. It was brought up in a different iteration through a purchase power agreement, but there is still an interest in actually executing this project, although it was not included within the original warrant article request. What's being proposed is the installation of a 75 kW solar system on the top of the library at a total cost of $141,000. That's based on a 2019 estimate from Phrase Electric. The CIP committee reviewed the request and ultimately felt that it was a good project, but that the best way to actually achieve it was to, again, via capital reserve, make two $50,000 contributions in 2020 and 2021, with the remainder of funds to be raised via private donation or some other mechanism, therefore leaving that balance of $41,000 or whatever the final market project cost shall be to interested parties that would like to support the project. As a result, I've included this here again for the capital reserve account element, but the project is actually scheduled for execution in 2021, assuming that we can raise those private donation monies to move forward on it. The last project is one of the projects that's a bit more complex to explain, and I know that you've heard about this project from Alana Albee, the director of the Libby Museum, and also from all the architects. I'll do my best to summarize what the CIP committee's recommendation was on it. The Libby Museum is obviously an existing facility that is in need of some level of repair and renovation. Significant efforts have been undertaken in the past, including a septic upgrade. Certain structural elements were put into place as well to ensure the building was structurally sound. But there is a recognition that there are some system needs when it comes to HVAC and also some structural needs based on measurements that have been taken that do need to be addressed moving forward if the Libby continues to operate as it exists today. Aligning with that is a potential gift from a private donor to the town of Wolfeboro. This is a gift, an exhibit gift of North American animals, and the proposed project is actually changed a bit in scope. What's being proposed is to actually construct an addition to the existing Libby Museum, perform the needed renovations to the existing facility, but also, again, accommodate that addition for both HVAC equipment and the exhibit that's being gifted to the town. In total, this project then rises up to this total cost figure of $2.4 million in scope, which we expect to be far beyond the repair costs needed for the existing facility only. However, there is an existing agreement between a private foundation and the town of Wolfeboro for 2/3 of construction costs to be provided privately. That would obviously significantly buy down that $2.4 million in project cost. However, there is further clarification needed at this time about what the scope of that pledge actually is. Again, the pledge as it's written today is 2/3 of construction costs, but there needs to be more conversation between the town manager, board of selectmen, the Libby Museum, and the foundation about what the actual buy down will be, and therefore what the tax impact of an upgrade of this scope would actually be to the voters. Additionally, the Libby Museum director has applied for several competitive grants. I believe it's 14 in total, some of which are national, some of which are statewide. Brad, you can correct me if I'm off on that, but I think 14 is the number. Quite a few. So there is potential for additional buy down as a result of some award of those grants as well. The CIP committee ultimately recommended this project really as a placeholder in 2020, recognizing again that there are critical needs within the facility that do need to be addressed, but also recognizing that the scope of the addition and the scope of the private contribution is somewhat in flux and needs to be addressed before this warrant is formalized. I believe the selectmen will be working on this project over the next month to 2 months, both as part of the budgeting process and again as part of the warrant article review process. But the CIP has identified this as a $2.4 million placeholder within the plan. I'm going to quickly breeze through, and I'm actually not going to go through these projects individually, but 2021 is just around the corner. We have identified within the plan and pulled out the 2021 Horizon projects. You'll notice quickly that they do appear numerous here. There are 2 slides I have for these. Many of these are sewer projects, some are water projects. Additionally, there are some projects here that have no tax rate impact. But you'll see this again as part of the 2021 CIP process, and certainly some of these projects you'll see on the 2021 warrant article. I don't anticipate, I have some level of confidence, I would say, that none of these projects will likely be undertaken in the 2020 year. Department heads have not presented them as an urgent need, or they don't have accurate cost estimates for this year. It's our expectation that these will likely be in 2021 or some out year based on departmental adjustments. And just to give you a quick idea, here are the additional projects that are in there. Additionally, we have included a special call out this year, making a slight modification to our process of the out year projects. What I've tried to do here is pull out all of the projects that are in our out years of the CIP. Functionally, that's year 2022 through 2029, a full 8-year period there. What I've shown here are non-recurring projects, and what I mean by that is this does not reflect capital reserve contributions. It does not reflect other recurring investments that are being made by the town as part of the CIP that I've already discussed tonight. These are really individual projects that stand out. For example, you'll see the public safety building is shown on there at the $11.5 million number. And some of these other projects they may be small in scope, but they're sort of unique in nature. You can see the North Main Street sidewalks, South Main Street sidewalks. As we move on to page 2, different sewer pump station upgrades that are necessary, Forest Road upgrades. These are really unique projects that will be in those 8 out years of the CIP. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I've covered quite a bit of information there, I think. Hopefully I can answer the questions about department-specific projects, and if I can't, I'll be sure to get you an answer on any of those. And certainly I think for the 2020 projects, you'll be hearing more about those in the coming month.
That gave us a lot of information. Anybody have any questions right now? I'm sure we're going to get into them as we get into the budgets.
Yeah, it's a bit of an informational overload. I apologize for that. But
that's fine. Some of these will be warrant articles, some will
some
not.
might not. Yep.
So we'll deal with that as we go through.
Kathy, you did mention inter alia about the $11 million public works thing, and I think maybe the public should know that very few people approved the idea, and you even said it's on hold. So I don't think anyone looking at that's going to have to worry. Where are we going to get $11 million? Because there are many alternatives, as you have mentioned.
Yep. Yeah, that's really our starting point for the project, but there are substantial things we can do, like adjusting the per square foot cost, phasing the project. There are some adjustments that we'll make to ensure that project is certainly a smaller impact than it's proposed at today.
Yeah, I doubt we'll get to that number, David. Okay, thanks, Matt.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda is discussion of Route 28 Advisory Committee. Matt, are you doing that one too?
Thank you very much. Matt Sullivan, Planning Director. We have been meeting with New Hampshire DOT regarding the Route 28 project out in 2024. We've updated you, I think Dave Ford has updated you specifically about how those conversations are going, which we have some work to do there, obviously, based on our project scope, project cost, and the town's expectations. But one of the first things we do need to do is begin our public engagement process. Obviously, the steering committee has done quite a bit of public engagement. We've had some sessions with the Board of Selectmen, done some public presentations, but this is really the DOT's public process. One of the first steps in doing that is to establish a public advisory committee that will work directly with the project lead team, which is composed of DOT staff and Town of Wolfeboro staff. What I've recommended this evening to appoint that project advisory committee is to maintain functionally the same membership that existed on the steering committee that has been active for many years. My particular justification for that is that I think the steering committee put in a substantial amount of effort into the report that was ultimately sent to DOT. I would hesitate to appoint an entirely new, at least, composition of the team, and because I think it might potentially undermine the important work that was done and could move the project in another direction. So I've proposed to maintain the membership with a few small changes to include some other entities that I've identified as well. And my hope this evening is that you'll ultimately choose to move forward with this membership, and we can work to work out some appointees.
Should we send out letters to these people asking them if they're still interested? That's probably the way to do it.
We certainly could, yeah.
I think that would be one way to do it.
That's good.
What about residents who live on this road? Maybe I don't know, but are any of these people residents that live on this road?
They are not.
What about residents who live on the road?
Well,
yeah, that's true. Brewster is one entity.
No, I mean,
but
that's a business entity. I'm talking about, Mary Smith, John Q. Public, who lives on the road.
There aren't any individuals that fit that.
I can say that at all the different meetings that I went to, and I think most of us have, there certainly have been quite a few stakeholders that live on Route 28 at those meetings. I mean, they were very well attended. Mm-hmm. So people that are on this committee, Paul, are people who started with the group There certainly has been a lot of interaction with people who live on the road. At least that's been my, Linda, you got a comment on that one?
Yeah, I mean, we did some contact-sensitive solution meetings, and that helped put together the design. And there were a lot of people who lived on the road or right near those areas, giving us very positive input onto how to change different intersections. One was to make the end of Pleasant Valley Road, where you kind of tee in, to put a stop sign. That was one of the recommendations. So I think that there's been a lot of public input on the design that we have right now.
Can I make a suggestion? I think you're all absolutely right, but I think it might behoove us to potentially advertise the citizen-at-large positions on this and solicit interested parties, just to ensure that folks that are here, A, want to participate again, and B, that there aren't folks out there that might want to participate as well. So potentially we could post those 3 citizen-at-large members to the website and bring a list of potential candidates to you for appointment. Would that be a compromise to potentially get some new membership?
Oh, I see 3 on here now.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, as groups get larger,
Yep.
they sometimes don't work so well together. But public meetings and stuff usually will bring input from those people. So we could, as far as the at-large, I think the rest of them, you know, some of the names aren't on here, like from Brewster and Governor Wentworth, so forth, Lakes Region Planning, Huggins, DOT. There are no names there at this point, so I think that we could send letters out to people that we know are on the list, see if they're still interested, and then go from there. That's my suggestion, but
Okay.
I agree with you,
I
Dave.
think, you know, as you get committees larger and larger, that sometimes doesn't become productive. There's going to be, I'm sure, public meetings along the way, so.
I suppose my question would be then, if one of these folks does not want to participate, on the, particularly the citizen at large, are we free to advertise that then?
I would say yes.
I'd say.
I would too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go along with my colleagues. I just, and I've been to all the context-sensitive solutions going back to, I think it was 2011 or 2012. And I agree, there's a lot of citizens that are there who live on the road. And some of them might want to have their name on a piece of paper that says, I'm on that committee. And I don't want to expand it because I agree with the chairman that it becomes a rodeo of goats if you have too many people. But I'm a big believer of mixing it up a little bit. So I'll go along with my team. If any of the folks who are, you know, the Chamber of Commerce members or the others don't want to serve, then maybe we should open it up to the public.
I'd also suggest that they be stakeholders who are living on Route 28. I mean, that would be more useful to have somebody from Huggins, for example, than having somebody from, you know, Melody Island or something, you know.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
So
Matt.
you're comfortable with the membership as presented here? Okay, great.
I
Thank you.
think you heard that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is discussion, project delays, Public Works Director. Everybody wants to know.
Everybody wants.
Hello, Dave Ford here. So, I've been meaning to get this to you, but because of complications, I think Jim wanted to be here also. The Cary Beach parking lot, I am reporting we are behind schedule because of the engineers and the survey, and we had hoped to have the project completed and well on its way, but because of these delays, we got to the point of the CIP when we're kind of rushing, and I think some important issues have come out that I wish we would have had an earlier time to discuss. We have met with the Parks and Rec staff, and as we have got the design to a really good spot, we're at a price of $450,000, which we presented to the CIP committee. At the same time, we had a detailed scope of work for Underwood Engineers, and that has not been completed. I've had multiple meetings with them, and that work is progressing well. And what I would like to do is have a specific meeting with the board on that design, because I think it is very important. Matt alluded to the issues of our beaches, and something else we're going to talk a little bit later about Albee Beach. And I'll just mention, originally I thought, oh geez, we got to put a new restroom down there. We have an old septic system, and we should replace that up to date, whether we pump it or to the sewer system or create an advanced septic system. And but then, not shortly after I had that thought, we had the issue at Albee, the Albee Beach, in which we had overcrowding, and we have created a beautiful restroom facility with showers, and now it has become a magnet, not just from our area, but pretty much the state now. The word's out there how nice a facility we've created, and as a result, we're having traffic jams on weekends and issues we have there. And then the concern became, now we have an environmentally sensitive area. If we go ahead and upgrade it in a similar fashion, would we not create more traffic and maybe create more problems? So one of the issues here, as well as we need to talk about on all the beaches, is we're kind of a victim of our own success. We're a beautiful town. We take care of our infrastructure, and we share it for free. And it's come to a point where I think we're going to have these discussions is how do we, limit the traffic, and how far do we go with the amenities? And one of the issues we're going to be considering is under the wastewater end, the cost to put in a system that would have zero or almost zero impact on the lake is going to be very significant, because we pretty much would have to pump it. Any type of leach field will have some impact on the lake being that close, especially with the preconditioned condition, which is probably a wetland underneath where the parking lot is now. So one of the issues might consider is going more to a limited services. So not having flush toilets, but maybe just having porta-johns, fancy, nice porta-johns, and maybe more of them than we have, but limit that. And maybe not build a really big parking lot, but limit the parking lot. And try to restore what we have, but try to keep it more of a family beach that's more local beach, and maybe even the consideration, would it be a locals-only beach? But I know that's a whole complicated issue. But again, if you don't build the amenities, you won't attract people. Some people come to our facility just to use the facility. And again, on Albee, obviously we have the issue of the pathway, which is also another attractor. So in any case, I would like to bring this back, and I would say that we are still considering different alternatives and also looking at the big picture. This project will be used as a credit in terms of the whole Winter Harbor watershed. So even though we're looking at funding this all from within, it could be used to parlay another grant for other work within the watershed. And I think we wanted to make sure, if we're going to spend $450,000, it is going to removing the phosphorus and the nutrients that are causing the problems. And if we can shrink this project, get the same quality by maybe reducing some of the scope, saving some money out of this, maybe we could also use it for other amenities, other BMPs to reduce nutrients. But the big news is, I just want to say, I apologize for the delays, because it should have been done by now. I've got a lot of pressure on Underwood Engineers. They have responded. And I would like to have a separate meeting on that to go through the details when they come.
Can I just ask a question, Dave?
What's that?
Ask a question?
Sure.
So I asked you this at the CIP, and I think it would be good for folks out there to hear it. The bathhouse and the septic system at Cary Beach are not in the scope of this project. That's correct?
First off, I want to say two things. One, I just realized a mistake in my memo, because I said in the bottom, I had made a statement that I do not believe is true any longer, which is that the bathhouse septic system is potentially a source of the problem. So it was a mistake in here when I said we do not believe the bathhouse. That was Warren and I, Warren Muir, we've been focusing on runoff, creating erosion, which creates phosphorus nutrients into the lake. Last week, after I wrote the memo, I had sat down at the watershed management study being done by FB Environmental with the whole Molten Borough, and going through their reports and having discussions with their staff. Septic systems within 300 feet of the waterfront, even if they're built to state standards, still are being modeled at 20% of the load getting to the lake. That's pretty significant. And when you look at the total impact in terms of percentage, I was shocked to see that stormwater was 17%, but septic systems 18%. So in my mind, I've been chasing something, and I've been influenced by the Cyanobacteria Committee and I'm kind of was frustrated with Underwood Engineers because I was pushing them, let's get going. We pushed the stormwater and we put on hold the wastewater. I made the statement, that's incorrect. The septic system is an issue, and as is the issue of the house that's out there that doesn't have a septic system. Part of the work that's going on now that was part of the original scope, we're going to be doing test pits, we're going to evaluate that septic system, and up to the possibility of removing it totally. That would be the only way we know for sure, and then we either have to pump the wastewater up to our collection system, or we use porta-johns in a nice and have them pumped out on a weekly basis. Well, so those are things that will come up when I come next time.
Okay, because I was going to ask you to say what you said at CIP, which was the septic system and the bathhouse are not contributors to the cyano or potentially to the cyano issue, and now you think that they might be. Now my question, which is a new question, is if you go ahead and spend this $450,000 next year, we're going to have to come back and do a septic system.
I'm going to come to you with a report that's going to address those issues so that we know if the 450, what the next year's cost would be. And I'm going to bring to you these options, which would say, do we want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this, or within the 450, do we remove the existing septic system and put in porta-johns in 2020?
So then in that next meeting that we're going to have, you reference that there is a home that's right on the water there, that it has a tank. And when you said that that may be a contributing factor, in order to get that tank out or pipe it someplace, you're going to have to tear up a parking lot. So in this upcoming meeting that we're going to have, can we get a full view of really what we're dealing with there?
Oh, no, again,
thank you.
This is, I can apologize because of the delay. I pushed and I focused on stormwater. I really made a mistake here, and I just apologize for that, but I do think it's better to admit it now and to make sure we are spending money the right way as I normally do. I don't want to be rushing just for, this is not a demonstration project. This is real, and we got to remove phosphorus.
Are you going to have the test pits on that septic system done in a couple weeks, months? So
weeks. No, they're happening. We're scheduling those now.
Okay, so we'll have some clear data.
And we're going to be doing water quality testing in the lake, so I want to go out and actually test to see if there's any signs in the lake. So we're going to be doing that. That's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
And that's going to complete the scope that should have been done 6 months ago. Again,
Okay. It just is such a shift.
It is.
You know, we're marching down and thought we're heading and taking care of the runoff and stuff, and you're now telling me that all the design of the parking lot is only going to get about 17%.
No. You got to remember, the model for a watershed, so that's different. Don't take that down to the little level of the parking lot. So we look at the big picture when they put the model in, runoff totally, not this project site.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So then on a whole big project is not as, those percentages are really not meaningful to what we're dealing with right now.
On this particular project.
What
it did is, the light bulb went off my head. David, you idiot, septic systems are an issue. You can't avoid them. We would like to warn Muir, saying, hey, I built a new septic system. I put it across the street. I don't want to deal with him more. He's a very smart guy, and I agree with him. Then all of a sudden I said, wait a second, if you're within 300 feet, even though you have a new system, potentially a certain percentage of that, 10%, may be getting to the lake. So you can't discount it just because someone did it.
It's a different percentage, and that you'll bring us all that information, I hope.
Yep. Move on to the next one.
Yep.
Partridge Drive BMPs. Part of the our reaction last year was to reinstitute a project I had started working on, which was to minimize the runoff off of Partridge Drive down the hill to Whitegate Lane. We had done a study with Underwood Engineers and had developed these BMPs and submitted them for a grant, ARM grant, which was a wetland mitigation grant, and the limit of that was $50,000. So we had developed these BMPs, we had submitted them, and we didn't get the grant. And then I had the project last year say, hey, look, we got these projects ready to go, let's submit those at $50,000 and get them going. There was a disconnect between the engineer and myself. There were some mistakes with the report. When the BMPs were submitted, the wetlands people had rejected them. They were repackaged, resubmitted. The wetlands people again came back with the letter saying that it was not acceptable. Warren Muir and I met, and I realized there were mistakes. At that point, I finally found out where the mistakes were. We have now, part of my meeting with Underwood Engineers was to figure out how best we can correct this problem and then move forward with a bigger and better solution. The issue is we have a subdivision that was approved in the 70s and 80s, half-acre lots, a lot of pavement, and as that has developed, all the right-of-ways, the drainage ditches have become wetlands, but the question is, are they jurisdictional wetlands? They are, because they're wetlands, but are they valuable wetlands? And we're trying to create these best management practices within the right-of-ways. So we want the runoff to go into the trenches, into the ditches, which are now qualified as wetlands. And the DES is now telling us you can't put a BMP in a wetland. So it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It has set us back. And the BMPs we had proposed, the 3 for $50,000, are not going to happen this year because we missed our season. We don't have the permits. And we realized that the engineering was somewhat optimistic in terms of can we build it. So we had to do some modifications. We've resubmitted the permit for one BMP, which we feel we can do, and we have the easements, and that was submitted. I don't know if we're going to still be able to get that done this year. We still have the money within the road budget to do the structural BMPs. Part of our resubmittal of the permit is to talk about the big project. And this is what I talked about at CIP, which was in that neighborhood of Partridge Drive, Maplewood, Berrywood, Jiminy, the couple dead ends there. We have a water system that's the end of its useful life. It's one of our areas we have low pressure. In the summer, we experienced, when higher use, there was really some problems. I've had a couple of water main breaks out there. We have roads that are in really rough shape and they need to be redone. And now we have a drainage issue, which is pretty significant. And instead of a Band-Aid approach of trying to do 3 small projects, the concept now is maybe we should do a really big project within the whole watershed. And that is what I'm proposing in 2021 to engineer that. In 2022 would be construction, which would be a bigger project. We'd be looking at doing some catch-up on the road, so it would be a bond project and might fit in with the some other road bonds falling off, and then we would have a water bond for the water side, and we would then try to get all the runoff back in the ground within the subdivision and kind of be a complete street project and be something that it wouldn't be a Band-Aid, it would be a bigger solution. All that is going to hinge upon us, talking to DS and making sure we can work with some common sense. So that one is very frustrating, and it's something that, again, I did present that at town meeting. That's something that to get done, and it has not worked out. Any questions on that? The last one is the Park and High Street. Similarly, we had delays on the survey, and with the CIP, as we had discussed, and trying to stay within a range, we had delayed the construction of these. The engineering was not ready, so I don't have the completed detailed cost estimates. So we decided to complete the engineering this year, get the cost estimates, and then we would submit it for the CIP in 2021. So that's where we are with project delays. Someone had talked about the capital projects report. I'm working on that, so I'd like to be able to have that updated for you at probably the next meeting, if depending on how the schedule works.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is a discussion, access to Albee Beach. Now, I know there's quite a few of you here from that area. Let David talk. This, again, is a discussion only. Nothing has been decided at this point amongst any of us, so this is strictly a discussion. Find out we've had some issues with the owner of the new inn, and I think David wants to discuss some of that. I will give you people a few minutes when David is done, okay? And I'd like to limit it as little as we can, only because this is just a discussion. We know we have a letter here, at least one, but again, it's a discussion only. There's nothing going to be decided here tonight on either way.
Okay, I think it might be best, again, for everyone that I read the letter, if that's okay. You normally like to kind of wing it, but I think there's stuff in here that I want to make sure it gets out. This was to the board and to Jim from myself, and basically this year, the paved access road to Albee Beach, which runs along the backside of the Lake Wentworth Inn, going towards the Cotton Valley Trail, degraded to a point that the cars were bottoming out because of rutting. It is really significant rutting. The highway crew was requested to pave in ruts, and it was a while ago. We finally got to it. When we got one side of the filled in, the owner called me. He was very upset. His name was Mr. Paul Ford. He said we did not have a right to do any maintenance on the road. I stopped the foreman, ran down right away, met with him, and realized that technically he was correct. While we have a right-of-way, apparently the details do not talk about maintenance. It does talk about that we should have contacted him. We kind of got, maybe over the last 10 years, the inn has not been very busy. It's never been an issue. Rarely do we even see cars parked there. This year, with all the improvements he's done, he's sunk a lot of money into it. He's really done a good job of upgrading the facility. And with the increased traffic at the beach, we had some really, really serious problems. His concerns were specifically safety, and that beach users, many of them from out of state, were speeding in and out of the access. And the only thing that slowed them down was the rutting. He asked for a meeting, and I then called the meeting, talked to the town manager, Christine, Matt, and myself. We met with him, and again, he expressed his concerns and pretty much said that it's extremely dangerous. He noted very specific concerns about people coming off at 28 at high speeds, people missing the turn, then going through his parking lot at high speeds, and then people almost, when they're coming out, they get aggravated because they have to slow down, that they step on the gas and gut it coming out. It does not sound like people that I know, but it doesn't surprise me because we have a lot of visitors in the summer who really don't really care. So I think it's a pretty serious issue. I go on to say that Mr. Ford has invested money into the renovation of the inn, and he expects more activity next year and has demanded the town do something or he will install his own speed bumps to slow traffic down. He contends that while the town has a right to cross his property, we do not have a right to upgrade or maintain this right-of-way without his permission, nor do we have a right to create a safety issue within the right-of-way. In talking to Christine, Albee Beach has become our most popular beach with summer head counts nearing an estimated 16,000 visitors. The new public restroom and shower facility and increased use of Cotton Valley Trail have made this a very popular spot. Also, the word has gotten out via social media that Albee Beach is free parking, free beach access, free public restrooms. This increased traffic has created traffic jams and full parking lots on peak weekends. Many of our visitors from out of state, and Mr. Ford has stated that they travel at very high speeds, coming and going to the beach, only slowing down when the pavement is bad. So this is where I come in. I believe the Board of Selectmen need to discuss Albee Beach access, road safety. Prior to next summer, we need to develop a policy and propose changes to address safety concerns, or we have an owner of the right-of-way that takes matters into his own hands. I think it might be like a lot of these little turtles, or he might throw things in a way. It will become a problem. So I think we do need to address it. I threw out some ideas about potentially a work session like we had on the roads. It might be a good, so we could sit down, we could invite people who are stakeholders. Obviously, we have people who live on both of our right-of-ways to the beach. And we had talked about the issue of potentially using radar. They talked about the issue, does police have any jurisdiction on the private roads where it's town access? Then we talked about the overcrowding issue. Again, those are issues that I think are kind of the bigger issues, but the specific issue is really the need to look at the safety issue and what do we do to make sure that we don't have what happened last year, and that we can work with Mr. Ford on the access issues. So that's quite a bit. Any questions?
I've got stuff I'm going to say, but I think we need to let the people who are here who live on the road.
I think that you mentioned sitting down with Parks and Rec and so forth to discuss this and see what they might have to say. Sure, at some point Christine will do that with us.
My suggestion is the board hold a work session with Parks and Rec and Public Works.
That's what I mean.
That we can really get into these issues, and maybe other people can identify issues, and we can prepare to have a work session so we can sit down. I don't think tonight we can get into a lot of the details, but I would like to, if there's specific concerns, obviously we should hear those. But
We start budgets this week, so for the next 3 weeks or so, we're going to be busy almost every night.
Yeah.
understand.
I don't think it's going to happen in the next 3 weeks or so.
Yep. No, I mean, I just wanted to bring it up. I did what I told Mr. Ford I would do, and from this point, I think I've handed the ball to you guys. So.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, as David had mentioned, there are evidently 2 rights of way into Albee Beach, and I know the people on Moose Point. Some of you are here tonight. I'd like to hear just briefly from you. Again, nothing's going to happen tonight, but we just want to hear from you. We have a letter here, I believe, from, which I just got it tonight, so I don't know what's in it yet. I haven't read it. So, you want to state your names for the record as you...
Rich Massey, 74 Moose Point Road, and I'm one of the signers of the letter. And as far as it goes, I think in terms of its discussion of Moose Point Road as an alternate access, I think the letter speaks for itself. So I'll let it do that. What I wanted to say, however, was that the point of the letter is not to criticize the town for what it has done so far in trying to deal with the issues around the beach, but rather to express some concern about the fact that there's been no attempt to engage the full range of stakeholders, many of whom are here, and who extend beyond the residents of that road. There are any number of other stakeholders, and to express our concern that they have not been, and express the hope that in the coming discussions they will be. Just one other comment I want to make, and it's related to something that Dave said, and that is that there have been some assertions about the limitations of what the town can do on that right-of-way. It seems to me that there's been a fair amount of uncertainty on the part of what I've heard and discussions I've been in about what the motel ownership's prerogatives are and what the town's rights are. And it seems to me at this point, or fairly soon, it would be a welcome addition to this discussion to have some input from the town's legal counsel to establish a fairly solid base about what the town really can and can't do, because it is not, I think, at all obvious that the town's hands are completely tied. So just those observations, and again, thank you for the time, and we just want to express the hope that, or to say that if at whatever point the town wants to begin discussions about these issues, we have people who are ready, willing, and able to participate and contribute.
Yeah, follow up on that. If you want to give some names and addresses or emails, 2 or 3 people to the town manager, so he has that, so that we can notify you people directly as far as when we have meetings or discussions. It will be at different times.
Sure.
And you might want to watch the website, because sometimes it may or may not be discussed when Christine brings in her budgets, even. But I think you're right. One of the things I know I thought of was, when I read this thing from David, was town council needs to get involved right away before we get started too far down this road.
Exactly.
To discuss that, the right-of-ways, and what we have, what we can do and what we can't do, before we start butting heads with people. That isn't the way to do it, certainly.
Agreed. And we will pass.
If you would supply Jim with at least 2, maybe 3 names, I know Linda probably knows them all anyway, but would notify her, but I'd rather have it come from Jim when we start having some formal discussions.
We most certainly will.
And then any information we get from town council, I think, should probably be given to them as well. I mean, to a point. We'll approve
We'll discuss
what's
that.
given out, but, yeah.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Linda?
Yeah, I have a few comments. And first of all, I want to say that I think the owners of the Wentworth Inn renovations are very attractive, and I hope they do well. They are an asset to the town and an economic driver. But on the other hand, we also have an asset, the beach. So in our August 14th work session, which we had, we discussed the Albee Beach access road, and my understanding was that we were going to try to do a contact-sensitive solution here, and that we were going to bring in all the stakeholders. So after that meeting, I asked for the deeds, and I asked for the site plan from the town. I have not received any. I asked again this week, and I didn't, so I went to the Carroll County Registry of Deeds website and looked up the deeds and the site plan. Just a little history. In the 1980s, there was a proposal to rezone the Allen property to allow a 400-site RV park. That zoning ordinance proposal was defeated at least twice. After the voters approved, the town, after that happened, that RV park was defeated, the voters approved the town purchasing the Albee Beach property with 2 rights-of-way on July 20th.
Who proposed the purchase? I did.
Did you? Well, Jim Bradley was involved.
No, but I made a motion, and I said they're not making...
Dave Bowers was instrumental in us getting that.
Yes,
Dave,
I said they're not making any land anymore, we should buy it.
I'll acknowledge that you were the one. In the deed, the Camp Road, which is Moose Point Road, was reserved as a possible fish and game boat access road. And I found that in book 1342, page 553. The right-of-way on the motel side was established by the planning board in 1977, as cited in that previous deed. I provided to the board this site map of the right-of-ways that was recorded in book 102, page 56, and that plan shows the one access into the Albee Beach, and it was recorded at the Registry of Deed on the December 16th, 1989, and that was how the board had decided to use the right-of-way into the Albee, into the beach lot. The deed does read that the primary access is on the Moose Point Road. It was in the deed it said Camp Road, but it is the Moose Point Road. The town bought it from Barbara and Alvin White, and the town has been using this right-of-way for over 30 years, or over 20 years, and close to 30 years, and I believe that by prescriptive right, that this has become the primary access to the beach. Obviously, we need a legal opinion. I'm not an attorney, but I think it's important to see that when we did record a site plan, it shows that the motel side as the prime access into the beach. So That's where I am. I have no problem making Albee Beach a residents-only beach, if that will help solve it. I have no problems if they put standard speed bumps to slow people down. I have no problem with that. I just don't think it's a good idea to pick this right away and move it to someplace else and take all the problems we're having here and put it over in another spot. In terms of another work session, I thought we had already discussed it in a work session. That's why I went and grabbed the minutes, because we had discussed it. So, and I'm with you, Dave. We have enough meetings coming up. You know,
I think there's some other issues, to me, from my perspective, that have come up since the last time we met even. So I think we ought to wait till we're through with budgets and then start up on this again. That's for next year.
Well, unless we want to put a warrant article out to make it a private town beach.
I think probably once we get through with our budget stuff, we might have time to do that.
I'm fine putting it off.
Yeah. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Paul?
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thank you, Linda. That was good to learn. And I second that we have we don't want to have neighbors against neighbors. Just don't want to do that. That's a dumb thing to do. And I think that that what the inn has done and what the signatories to the letter have done is exactly the right thing. They're teeing up an issue, and I think that's right. This goes back, as Linda has capably told us, this goes back a long time. I use Albee Beach, and I go there in the summertime and the wintertime, and I've seen the traffic, and I've bottomed out my car, and I've seen the parking lot clogged up. And I've heard our dear friend talk about not being able to take her mother there to go swimming. I remember that. And so I think it's time. I really do. I think it's time that we don't want to get in a situation where it's one versus the other. That's not what we're going to be about. I think we do need a body of facts, and Linda's contributed that. I think we've been chipping away at this, but I don't think we're doing enough. I mean, whenever it was, Christine came to us and said, we gotta stop getting the buses in there. And we did. And what they did is they dropped off people, and then they parked their bus behind the Wentworth Inn. And I caught them doing it, right? And I called the chief. So I know we got budgets to do, and we have to get through that stuff. So unfortunately, you'll have to get in line on that stuff. But I think getting around the table, as we've done on a lot of other things that we've done in this town, and having a respectful conversation and not getting the neighbors at each other, because at the end of the day, we probably can do something here. We probably can't fix everything, but I think we probably can do some things. And so I agree that it needs to get put on the table and it needs to go forward right as we get the budget stuff done. Thank you.
David?
I would agree with Linda. There's no point in taking problem A and moving it over to Moose Point Road because we used that existing road for 30 years, and it probably provides more direct access to the parking lot anyway. We all know that's the problem, but I think from my viewpoint, we need to work with the owner of the LNA, the new LNA, and maybe put in some regulations like not have buses from other towns come in and so forth, but not change the right-of-way.
Okay, so everybody aware what the next step is pretty much, and we'll be in touch with you people directly as soon as we have something set up for times.
Are you all from Moose Point?
Okay. Next is approval, Public Works, Water and Sewer, those department management change.
So I just would like to speak to this before we hand it over to David. Dave, myself, have had numerous conversations with regards to all of the entities that he oversees. We've, through these meetings, have had discussions regarding succession planning. We've had discussions regarding not being able to complete projects. We've had conversations about workload. And and trying to find a more efficient model moving forward. So through this, Dave is the expert within his departments. He knows these inside and out. So he's here to discuss this change moving forward that we'd like to bring into the 2020 budget cycle to try and improve the product that we're giving to our citizens. It's all yours, Dave.
Thank you, Jim. So I laid out the proposed changes, and I think I'd go through them, and then maybe we can look at the org chart. But I think Jim did hit the reasons for this. When I came on board, there were 2 department heads, and we combined the 2 positions to create one. And you know, since that time, I think I've done an adequate job of managing both departments. But the capital projects, I think when we started back in 04 and 05, you know, we had default budgets. We were having a hard time even getting road money approved, and we've grown, I think. And if you look at the amount of projects that we've completed over the last 12 years, it's been pretty impressive. And a lot of the projects were managed within the department saving money. In the recent years, Budget Committee has come after me saying, you know, we're approving you $800,000 for your road money, but you're spending a lot more money on the roads. And John Burt, you know, is actually accurate that we do use a lot of our O&M money, the manpower, trucks, and but we account for all the outside services and materials and pipes and catch spaces with that. But one of the things that has come to the realization is that I spend a majority of my time managing projects. And currently I'm at, I think 60% on the total town budget and 40% on water and sewer. But the reality is I have to spend, right now I've got a bridge project we're managing, $1 million bridge project. We have the Pine Street road construction. We've got the restroom project going on, $300,000. And we just did an $80,000 emergency project at the RIB project, and we're now working on really significant design, and we just had a nice peer review. We have a lot of good input. I am not satisfied yet. You know, I want to have the most robust design so that I can come to you and say, once we do that final solution, we're going to be good for the 50 years. So we are really not taking that project for granted. So there's a lot of work there, and I feel as though I am not spending enough time on some of those particular projects, because running departments, it's a lot of it is, you know, signing time cards and the personnel issues and budget issues. And we also came to realization that there was potential changes last year, and we could have been in a lot of trouble if I would have left early. We would not have had someone to be able to pick up the pieces. I really delegate a lot to my people, and I try to give them what they can handle. But there's certain aspects of the job in terms of project management and of managing a department that you really have to be the person doing it. So there's really no one else to delegate to. And I do believe it's time for us to bring in a new public works director to be responsible for the 5 divisions under the general government, which are the highway, the public works garage, solid waste, buildings and grounds, and then the administration. And that the water and sewer department, which is still running both the water plant and the wastewater plant, all the distribution system and the collection system and sewer pump stations, in addition to managing the big capital projects. So that's, I'm trying to make that split. Again, I would, Scott Pike would also be reassigned in terms of, right now, one of the issues we had with this I formation, he reported to me, and then he had everyone underneath him. He's getting burnt out. He's trying to do multiple projects, and I think I had him assigned to do capital, asset management planning, and he always gets pulled into the crisis management. I try to pull him out of the highway or road construction or snow removal. He gets sucked back in all the time. We need to be able to free him up so that he can implement the asset management plan. We have spent a lot of money. We got a lot of grants. We got one for the water system. We got one for the water treatment plant. We got one for the sewer collection, and we got one for the stormwater. We have 4 grants at $30,000 apiece. So we've got over $100,000 invested in asset management. We got these great reports, and my fear is they're going to be stuck on my shelf and not implemented. We're ready to take the next step, but I need to have a dedicated body who understands not only the technology, but also what we're doing on the water sewer side. So this also would help us focus him on that effort. He would become out of the Public Works, so the new person would be basically responsible directly for the highway and snow removal operations and directly responsible for the Public Works garage. One of the areas that I'm very weak on, I think I've been honest with that, it is on equipment. I've never really had a lot of experience with equipment. I rely on my people. Lately, I've been very frustrated with our vehicle maintenance and our equipment purchasing, so we're having some issues there, and I think we need to put more attention from the director on top of that, and that's one of the things as I get pulled away from doing crisis management, we're not doing enough preventative, and actually looking at these trucks. I'm learning more about the trucks after 12 years. I'm still realizing the issues that the air pollution control equipment is creating with our engines and why the engines aren't lasting longer. There's a lot to it. Every area of our business there's a lot to it. And I think this would allow us to bring someone in with some additional expertise in areas that could strengthen us up. I could still be there as a mentor, and the plan would be a 6-month, so we would wait until July 1st to hire this person. That would give us adequate time after town meeting and search to get the right candidate. I would still be charging 20% of my time in 2020, so that would be for the first 6 months, and then to be the liaison after that in the year 2021. We would see how that worked out, and the big issue is where do we get the revenue to make up my salary, and that is creating a capital projects manager department in which we would take a percentage of the capital projects and use that time that I'm actually spending on those projects, but now bill me to the project. And that's where the 60% would come from. I ran a quick example of that, and I think in terms of the first chart on the second page talks about where currently we have the allocations of the 100, 200 series cost for the management. And if we did nothing, the total would be $461,000. By adding this new position over a 6-month period, the net cost is going to be $77,000 increase, and the impacts would be less on the public works side. On the highway administration side, it would come down a little bit. Water would go up a little bit. Sewer would be stayed about the same, but most of the money is going to be changed to the capital projects, and that would be based on the going from the percentages we are now to the proposed 20%, and then 20, 20, and 40. And then where would you get the money from? I used last year's money, but I just, again, as we were talking today about what is approved in the CIP budget, we would be looking at the roads at $900,000, docks at $400,000, Cary Beach at $450,000, and the wastewater treatment plant at $125,000. That's just the gross appropriations that are proposed for 2020. 5% of that would be $93,000. And at this point, we would want to start it. We had a meeting today with Troy and Jim about the accounting of it and how do we do this transition without getting overly complicated. So I think the full budget could be developed as long as the selectmen are okay with that. I didn't want to go too far if I was going down a road that was not acceptable to the board. So I think Jim and I wanted to make sure we were okay with that, but we did want to show you that there were examples how that would work. And I guess I think I'll stop right now and see if we can take some questions.
I've got one on the chart that's on the second page. You said proposed budget changes, and that totals to $461,973. If that's what it's going to cost us for these changes, then it says budget impact versus no changes.
Yeah, see, that was a typo. When I say it should be, that's the budget as proposed, no changes. So it should have said, the proposed budget with no changes. So if we didn't do anything, the total number for all the salaries of the people
would be the 461.
Right.
Okay, I found that very confusing, and I went back and adding things up, and I couldn't.
I would apologize.
If you were asking me for $400,000, the answer would be no right now. So thank you for clearing those headings.
One of the problems is trying to write a memo when you work out of a bus station, and I really...
I just couldn't...
That was a mistake, yeah.
So what you're really talking about now, the cost to the taxpayer, you're thinking is going to be about, we're going to have a new position for Public Works Director. about 100,000 by the time you pay salary and the benefits. And then there's going to be another, if this year would be 93,000, because we're not paying 5% on any of our other projects. So that is another raise.
The budgets that I have worked on, and ones I just mentioned, all have engineering dollars in contingency. So a 5% would fit within the already proposed authorizations. What we would like to do is, if we're okay with the concept, and I do want to make sure that we make sure that there's no RSAs that say we can't appropriate warrant article money that pays for a staff person. And I don't think there's a problem with that, but we should make sure we get that covered. That we would present it as such. When we break the spreadsheets down, we would say there's a management is going to be charged to the capital project.
So you're telling me now that in those warrant articles, when there's a figure, let's say 50,000 for engineering, that's going to be for you?
And
partly
again,
for you?
Partly. So for instance, now when we talk about the road money, I have some dollars already for engineering. That's with the idea that I'm going to hire someone else. I may be able to do most of the work myself and cut that 30,000 to 15,000. On the wastewater treatment plant, I may be able to, take a bigger piece. So each project, depending on what my role is and where the budget is, would depend on how much percentage. But I wanted to take an average to show you that this accounting would work. And I think it is a way of trying not to spike the O&M budget, and B, not to have this critical impact on the capital budget. And really, it's more or less, we're trying to reflect the cost of what I'm doing now, except that I'd be doing more engineering and less department managing.
I will give you this answer for me. I like the concept. I think we've spread you very thin over the years that you've been here. You've produced very well. We've gotten a lot accomplished, but it seems to make sense to look at dividing this up. My only concern is how much in 1 year and what is going to be the impact to the tax rate. And so we got to get a handle on that,
Right,
we got 100,000 right now, we know, and then how much of this capital projects are in the engineering and how much of it will be more than what we have in the engineering.
And I would agree with Linda's ask. I also would want to know what gets better. What gets better by doing this? I intuitively, I think I understand what gets better, but I'd like to have more texture as to what gets better if we split the role and concentrate. I think it's obvious, but I'd like to hear that. Not here, but when we get to the point of understanding what the final proposal is.
So we're okay with the concept, develop the numbers a little better, and I can also show you the impacts in 2021 based on the salary range we're talking about. And then, but I'm going to go forward with submitting the budgets this way.
I'm fine with that.
So there won't be any surprises, but then...
I think the concept makes sense at this point, to me.
Yeah, and we've just, today, Dave, myself, and Troy sat down for the better part of 6 or 8 hours today going through his budgets. So we're in that process now. We're following back around Monday morning to try and finalize the rest of his budgets. So we'll have a much better handle on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, next is dockside beautification.
So Mr. Rourke had sent a letter to the Board of Selectmen. I think everyone should have received that. And I think he said a lot of nice things, and I think it's a fact that the town has been working with in the downtown area going back as 2007 when we put the stamped concrete in and we extended the historic rail. We've been working with the Garden Club and with Greg. He has brought this to me years ago. Can we make a little bit more pedestrian area by the ice cream stand? So we're talking about where the ice cream stands in the back of his building that's fronts on Main Street. And the intent would be to, as we are now doing work in the area, could we give up 3 of the parking spaces that are kind of really tough to get into because they're on a dead end, and they become very difficult to get out of when there's people around, and convert it to a pedestrian area with some additional plantings and seatings. and he had his landscape architect come up with some ideas, and they made this nice little plan. So I don't know if anyone, you have a copy of the plan with the so he is looking at pledging dollars to plant and do some of the work as if we could prep the work. And the reason this is kind of important now, we will be going right, if you look at this picture and you see the existing ramp on your right and you see to the left, he's got 3 types of flowers. We have a sewer line that's going to be cutting right through here. We're going to put a new sewer line in for the new bathrooms and a new water line. So we're going to be digging up that parking lot. So a good portion of it will be ripped up. So for us to prep it for a different surface would not be a big deal. But I think the big deal is losing the parking spaces. So before we go any further, I said, let's talk to the selectmen to see whether or not you would be willing. And one of the issues also would be a trade-off. We could get a couple of motorcycle spots in, potentially in the area that would make more sense. But we would lose three parking spaces.
Is any rainwater going to get harvested?
Well, we got to harvest rainwater.
Any runoff water going to get harvested?
Well, that's an excellent idea. We could put a rain barrel on the dockside building, on the docks. And we could, I mean, I hadn't thought about that. We water everything with municipal water, I guess, but that's actually a pretty good idea.
Well, my larger question is,
You're talking about rain barrels.
we're really concerned about throwing stuff in the lake, right? We're really concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're going to build something, wouldn't we? And I'm sure you guys have. We should consider that this is going to pick up, rainwater, runoff water, and stop it from going directly into the lake.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to turn impervious to pervious. But I thought you were considering getting the rainwater so we can water the flowers.
Well, if we want to do that, that's fine. But what I'm talking about is, in consideration for 9 tons of steel that drip oil, we're going to put something in that catches some runoff and actually slows down the amount of stuff that might go into our lake.
No, this is not a BMP. Okay, you're getting around to the question. So because of the runoff, this is not at the elevation where I can get the rest of the parking lot in to use this as a treatment system. So we're not designing a BMP or any sophisticated underdrain system. This is more for pedestrian space, a sitting area, to open up the area looking at the river and to bring some more flowers in.
And the second question would be, when we ultimately do the parking lot, what's going to happen to this thing?
This will fit in with the parking lot design, so that's where we can get the stormwater treatment is at the lower part in front of the docks where the water's going now. That's where we could do the BMPs, and the whole parking lot has to be redone at that time. So I think when Matt showed the 450, we're saying, hey, on the upper end, that's when we could put the BMPs in and continue. But this would be just a piece of the overall plan we had talked about. It was 2 years ago when we had the parking lot.
Yeah, and I think their solution came up that they did not want a lot of green space. Well, we did those 2 contact-sensitive solution
Well, the first one, we had a lot of positives. Second one, we got a lot of negative.
And I think
Who
were the people who showed up at the meetings.
Who were the stakeholders?
Who's the loudest person? The person in the who had office space in the yellow building looking out, and they didn't want to have any trees block their view. So they were not like they were having any axe to grind, but they were very adamant. But I think Mr. Rock has indicated here he would get talking to the businesses and getting people to park other places.
I question that. I hate to go back and have done those meetings and then come out and do something different. I'm with Paul. I'd like to see if we could gain any water quality rain barrel. I'd go for you can get some real nice looking rain barrels. But when I come down to the bottom line here, we're going to lose parking spaces. And what I think we really need to do if we decide to do this is get a parking committee and start deciding where in this town we're going to add some parking. Because if we lose 3 spaces here, I personally would like to lose all the parking spaces just before the crosswalks, either side. And if we turned around and kind of took this and those spaces and tried to find another parking area in the downtown, that's what makes the sense to me, that we really need to do that. We're going to take out all the parking spaces up and down Main Street for the 4th of July parade. We should have a parking plan, one that makes sense, get rid of those dangerous parking spaces in front of the crosswalks. We just have another one now here by Carpenter School. They now are having kids dismiss from 3 different doors, and coming down in front of the Pickering we have a car parked immediately in front of a crosswalk. It's okay coming up because there's a fire hydrant in the driveway. So I could give on this if I knew that we were committed to doing a parking plan. We try to do some rain barrels. In terms of his, the question about whether we do parking meters, that to me is a warrant article. That's a community decision. So that's where I am.
I just have one comment on what Linda's talked about. We had the context sensitive solution meetings and all that stuff there, and we kind of took a hit on the greenery along in that proposed design there. Just to make it clear, I think that was because a lot of that greenery was along by the docks there and stuff, which is going to cut people's view out looking on Wolfeboro Bay. Whereas this one here, if I'm looking at this right, this is actually going to be sitting kind of along the Smith River side of where it comes out underneath the bridge there between the backside of docks of the restaurant and I call it used to be Toby's Pharmacy there. That's where actually it used to be.
You're dating yourself.
I am, aren't I?
I'm going to go back a little further, Brad.
Okay. So the view there, I don't think is going to be as controversial looking out back over towards Garwood's or the docks over there stuff as we'd be looking out on the bay. So
I also attended that context-sensitive solution, and I concur with Brad that the consideration was that we didn't want to block views of the docks along where people sit and eat ice cream. And it's anecdotal, I can't prove this, but if you do look at those 3 dead-end parking spaces that are referenced here, you will see a beautiful, shiny, silver Jeep, mostly parked there, and you will see a couple of other business owners that park there. And I'm not all sweaty about losing 3 parking spaces. I'm really not. If we're adding less heat into this town, that's good. But I also concur with Linda that we should kind of double clutch here and say we're kind of okay with doing this, but we got to start dealing with the fact that we got kids coming out between parked cars that are really close to our crosswalks. And when we start having that conversation, we really do need to figure out where we're going to put all that metal, all that heavy metal that just drips oil on the ground. And so I'm okay with proceeding as long as we do the second thing, which is we start figuring out what we're going to do about overall parking spaces in our town. But I don't want to conflate one to the other. I don't want to have one of these, well, we have to do all this other stuff before we do this. I'm kind of like at a point saying this is okay. The other stuff, we kind of pinky swear that we're going to work on it.
No, but I think what you're saying is a master planning. If we're going to lose 3 here and potentially lose it maybe up to a dozen, Linda's talking about is very serious.
That's a number.
We could at least do 2 right away, we think should do. But, and then we say, how do we replace those within a reasonable walking distance? But there's not a lot of land, and we'd have to find, and most of the land is very expensive, but obviously by the railroad station, we have that building, and we're still not sure what's going to go on with that. And we have Mr. Sims' property, which is clearly there. So we have some issues, so I will put that as a action item to follow up with.
So I think I like that. 3 is easy, but when you get to 12, that's a material number in our town. That's a material amount of parking spaces that we really would have an issue with.
Right, but I think Linda's asking for a long-term plan.
Right.
Yeah, I think we have to move on. That's what I'm pushing, that long-term plan. And I really, if we could put some motorcycle spots, then we really haven't lost all 3 spots. And I'm really okay with that. I do believe that one of the 3 designs did have a green space over here.
Yep. Yes.
And it was, but I think at this particular point in time, you're right, the looks of the cars, what's the difference? You'll probably have a better look with this going on.
What we're proposing is one nice maple, and then underneath to be annuals with nice benches around, and then benches, so it'd really be a...
Long as you don't use any chemicals.
No, no,
Right,
no,
Paul?
I think,
Inside joke.
great, so we're going to move forward with that, are we okay?
I have two questions.
Yes.
The 3 spaces that you're going to lose here, if you go out there and look on the ground,
Yeah.
they're very narrow and very short.
Right.
So they're not our standard 10 by 20 size.
Oh, no.
So if you look at that, there's probably only going to lose 2 real spaces.
Oh, maybe,
Okay?
yeah.
Now, I'm going to go back further than these guys as far as Toby's Pharmacy.
Oh, here comes a history
There
lesson.
used to be a building right there.
Oh, really?
Used to be a building there, and I think Kathy will remember, it was New Hampshire League of Arts and Crafts, if I'm not mistaken. Correct? Okay, and it took up most of that space.
Oh, geez, I'm going to hit a foundation when I start digging?
There's a foundation there, there's
Oh,
probably
no, there'll be an
water
archaeological
there.
dig. We're going to have an
Used to be
archaeological.
Why didn't you tell him earlier?
bathrooms there, okay? But that was many years ago. Okay, I'm talking
that's
the-
right. That could be half a
talking
century
the
ago, right?
50s, early 60s.
Isn't that space in there also a space that we kind of designated for hawkers?
No, no hawkers in that place.
Okay, all right, never mind. All right, so we're going to have an archaeological dig.
Can I get through?
Good, well, we're all set, though, so we will go that way, and we'll get back to you about where we can find other spaces, keep that separate from this issue, all right? You got a second question?
I have a second question. On the Ty Bond report, all the pilings or the cribbing underneath this sidewalk and rail that we have here now?
Yep.
Okay, that's got to be replaced.
We're not going to replace it, we're going to reinforce it, so underneath the cribbing, instead of trying to, I mean, if we try to replace it,
Well, that was my
we're
question.
going to reinforce it with riprap on the outside, it's going to use mass, it'll be like a mass, so everything there, it's not disintegrating, so we're just going to reinforce it.
None of these sidewalks or railings or anything are going to be torn up.
Not unless we find, again, we're digging now, and if I find something, like I said,
Well-
a foundation that I didn't know about, that I tug on, all of a sudden the wall falls off.
I guess
tonight.
my point is, depending on when this might take place,
Yep.
you certainly want to do it after this project's done.
Oh, no, 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 we are committed to putting the bathroom in now, which is closer.
Not the bathroom, I'm talking about
Green,
this
this,
green space here.
We wanted to do that, I want to do it now, because I got the machines out there, so I either got to return it to parking, or I'm going to keep it this way, because we're going to be digging it up this fall. And by next spring, we want to be open. So this would be here next spring. If you say yes, if you say no, then it won't be here. You'll have to
Well, I
wait till we
guess
do
my
the parking
point
portion.
is, if we put this in and then we find out we got to come in with machinery to take all this up to fix the thing, or are we going to do it all from the water from barges?
Right at this point, my assumption, everything is going to be done from a barge in the river, off-season, and we're going to do it with riprap and equipment from the river, not from the shore going down, because it would be a lot better working from that angle.
Well, that would make a difference to me.
Excuse me?
That would make a difference to me.
Oh, it's
as
huge,
far as-
yes, yeah, oh, you're exactly right. We don't want to be digging this up again. But I
Yeah,
think-
you're going to run into some stuff in there.
Right. But the intent would be, all the other work going forward would be from the riverside.
Okay. That's what I need to know.
And I will just reconfirm that with Ty and Bond to make sure I got that right.
Yeah, could you find that out? Because, I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, let's go ahead with this, and then have to
and this
cover it
will be,
over with plywood to bring machines in or whatever. That doesn't make any sense to me.
and I'm assuming that with whatever the Rourke's are going to do and the money we have, we can take care of this?
Yes. Yes, so
Okay.
instead of putting pavement back in, we can help
just-
out and work together to get this done. I think
Okay.
it's a good partnership. Great. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, any other business?
Mr. Chairman, before Dave leaves, I just would like to make note that we're in receipt of a letter from Senator Maggie Hassan regarding an award that Dave received from the Environmental Protection Agency for Environmental Merit Award. And I'd like to have Dave speak on behalf of this. He just went and received this award, and I think it's kind of timely to the past 3 conversations that we've just had.
Well, sometimes you don't know, and this was a surprise, but part of our stormwater asset management plan, which we were one of the first communities in the state to do it, where we weren't forced to do it. Yeah, MS4 communities, and MS4 is a regulation that forces urban areas to do stormwater projects, and we have taken the lead by doing this and by doing the BMPs in our partnership with Wentworth Association in working on BMPs. Catherine Zink from New Hampshire DES nominated us, which is kind of a great thing, and it is all of Region 1, all of New England, so we went down to Boston at Faneuil Hall. I didn't realize how fancy it was going to be. Maybe we could have had some more representation, but we were upstairs at Faneuil Hall. I've been in the fancy halls, and we had a little reception up the 4th floor. I've never been up there, so it was really cool. And we had the Assistant Director of DES, Freeze, was there, as well as the head of the EPA. And so it was very nice, but it really is, I was accepting it on behalf of the town. I think, you know, it's not possible unless the selectmen say, yeah, Dave, go ahead and do that project, or the budget committee approves it. Or we have people like Catherine Bernard, who's always pushing me, saying, come on, Dave, we've got to do one more project, we've got to make it a little bit better. And it's really that type of spirit that keeps me going, right? Because every time I sit down, I got to break. Come on, we got to do one more project. So again, it's really a community project, and I think it really says a lot to the community, the Wentworth Association, a lot of the people who volunteer, and you people also. Again, without the selectmen supporting us, none of this would have happened. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other business? Committee reports. Mr. O'Brien.
Attended the CIP wrap-up. Overall, great job by the CIP team. Went to the police commission meeting. Police commissioners have reviewed the chief's budget, both in capital outlay, and operating, and have moved that over to Jim. I went to Employee Appreciation Day. That was fun. I went to the Carroll County Broadband Committee. All towns in Carroll County now, I think with the exception of Ossipee. Ossipee is going to join. They haven't joined yet, but all towns are now on this Carroll County Broadband Committee, including our Senator Bradley. We finished up the cyanobacteria conversations in terms of the website and things of that matter, and I'll brief the main cyanobacteria team before coming here. And last night I spent some time with the Lakes Region Newcomers Club talking about the telecom project that I worked on. There is a fair amount of people who have come up to me, sent me emails that are asking questions about the current contract we have with our cable provider. And I think there will be an ask coming forward by some of these folks to set up a little team to competitively bid the contract when it comes up. And when it comes up, it's due for renewal in 2021. I'll let them come forward with that. That's all I have to report.
Let's see, last night we had a planning board meeting where we had Matt did the presentation to us for the CIP committee. Also attended a CIP meeting last week up at Abenaki, and also the Employee Appreciation Day last Friday down at Foss Field. That was it for me.
I had none. David?
I went to the employee appreciation thing, which I appreciate. I've been helping some people with some historical projects, which is not a committee thing, but it takes a fair amount of time and it's very interesting.
And I think, Brad, you were there. I went to the Friends of the Libby Museum annual meeting, and you gave a nice presentation. I went to a number of CIP meetings with Paul, and I thought it was a very good process this year. I went to the Milfoil Joint Board meeting, and we're starting to investigate possibilities for passing the DASH unit on to another entity. And New Hampshire Lakes is going to see if they can help us with that. I was at Employee Appreciation Day. I attended a meeting of the Friends of the Libby, and I attended a meeting of the Friends of Pop Whalen.
Town managers report.
Yeah, as you're aware, we've buttoned up CIP. That was a great process. A lot of learning occurred there. I'm looking forward to it next year now that I've got a better handle on it, and I think we can capture some more efficiencies, and I enjoyed the process. And we're right into the heart of budgets, and that's pretty much what I'm spending 3 days doing right now, is working with the department heads, going over their budgets, and it's an interesting process for sure.
I think the watchword is Don't go near him if he's scratching his head.
That's the rumor.
Any questions from the press?
Press.
Okay, public input? Anybody want to deal with public input? What? Okay, non-public. Make a motion, we go into non-public under RSA 91-A.
So moved.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.